Hey, everybody, and welcome to the 5 Bytes Podcast. I'm your host, Rory Monahan. The podcast, as always, is brought to you by my sponsors. That includes Numescent, the inventors of the first and only cloud native container management platform for Windows desktops, and also brought to you by Master Packager, an application packaging software that helps you build packages that end users love, enterprises want, and the Windows OS needs. If you enjoy the show each week, you have these awesome sponsors to thank. And now for some news. Well, it's that time of the month again. Patch Tuesday was this week, and it saw 57 vulnerabilities being patched by Microsoft as part of the Windows updates. And that includes for vulnerabilities such as 28 elevation of privilege vulnerabilities, 19 remote code execution vulnerabilities, 4 information disclosure vulnerabilities, 3 denial of service vulnerabilities, and 2 spoofing vulnerabilities. Of the vulnerabilities, 3 are 0 days and 2 are under active exploit. The 0-day vulnerabilities include CVE 2025 62221. And this one is a Windows Cloud Files mini filter driver elevation of privilege vulnerability. As you might expect, being an elevation of privilege vulnerability, successful attack of this vulnerability allows attackers to gain system privileges. Another 0-day vulnerability is CVE 2025 64671. And this one is a GitHub Copilot for JetBrains remote code execution vulnerability. And this vulnerability could be used to allow an attacker to execute commands locally. Microsoft says the flaw could be exploited through a cross-prompt injection in untrusted files or MCP servers. And an attacker could execute additional commands by appending them to commands allowed in the user's terminal auto-approve setting, basically piggybacking off something that should be allowed to run something that's nefarious. Another 0-day vulnerability is CVE 2025 54100, and this one is a PowerShell remote code execution vulnerability. With this vulnerability, it could cause scripts embedded in a web page to be executed when the page is retrieved using Invoke-WebRequest. Microsoft said that improper neutralization of special elements used in a command in Windows PowerShell allows an unauthorized attacker to execute code locally. Microsoft has made a change that displays a warning when PowerShell uses the Invoke-WebRequest commandlet, prompting the user to add the -user basic parsing parameter to prevent code execution. So if you have PowerShell scripts that must run silently and they use Invoke-WebRequest, you should be aware of this update because obviously it's probably going to be causing your script to wait and not continue because it's missing that use basic parsing parameter. So you may need to go back and revisit your scripts that use this to include the use basic parsing safe parameter. And of course, other vendors such as the likes of Cisco, Adobe, and more have also released their own updates. And usually, the way this rolls out, issues are going to be reported with these updates in the coming weeks. Although I will say that 57 vulnerabilities being patched is on the low end. In the last couple of years, it seems like Microsoft has made an effort to limit the number of patches deployed around the holidays. So this might be in keeping with that. And hopefully, the issues and the fallout are minimal. According to bleepycomputer.com, Microsoft has silently mitigated a high-severity Windows LNK vulnerability exploited by multiple state-backed and cybercrime hacking groups in zero-day attacks. In fact, it has been suggested this patch started rolling out all the way back in June. And if you listen to the podcast, you may recall that this was originally disclosed back in March, but it was somewhat minimized by Microsoft at the time. It's tracked as CVE 2025 9491. And the security flaw allows attackers to hide malicious commands within LNK files, which, if you're not familiar, they're shortcut files, which could be used to deploy malware and gain persistence on compromised devices. However, the attackers do require user interaction to succeed, as they involve tricking potential victims into opening malicious LNK files. So there is a mitigating factor somewhat, but social engineering is a thing, so it's not much of one. Bart's Health NHS Trust, a major healthcare provider in England, announced that the Clop ransomware gang have stolen files from one of its databases after exploiting a vulnerability in its Oracle e-business suite software. The stolen data, according to BleepingComputer.com, are invoices spanning several years that expose the full names and addresses of individuals who paid for treatment or other services in their hospitals, information of former employees who owed money to the trust, and suppliers whose data is already public, has also been exposed. In addition to Bart's files, the compromised database included files concerning accounting services the trust provided since April 2024 to Barking, Havering, and Redbridge University Hospitals NHS Trust. The Clop ransomware gang has leaked the stolen information on their leak portal on the dark web. Bart's has already informed the National Cybersecurity Center, the Metropolitan Police, and the Information Commissioner's Office about the data theft incident. The hospital's operator stated that it is in the process of getting a high court order to ban the publication, use, or sharing of the exposed data by anyone, though such orders obviously have limited effect in practice. The healthcare organization assured that Clop's attack did not impact its electronic patient record and clinical systems, and it is confident that its core IT infrastructure remains secure. Patients who have paid Bart's are recommended to check their invoices to determine what data was exposed and to stay vigilant for unsolicited communications, especially messages that request payment or the sharing of sensitive information. So it always sucks to see healthcare institutions being attacked in this sort of way. Recently, Microsoft announced that it was rolling out Windows 11 25H2 to all users as long as they were running supported systems. And on the front of Windows 11 25H2, there's some good news as Intel has released new Bluetooth and Wi-Fi drivers, and with these latest versions, they can now support Windows 11 25H2, so it is going to be available or applicable to more systems. Now, whether you want to move to 25H2 just now is up to you, and I'll cover a little bit more on that in this episode's scripts, tricks, and tips. Last week, Microsoft announced changes to its 365 offerings, and as a result, its commercial pricing also changed for Microsoft 365 Suite subscriptions, and those changes will come into effect in July 1st of next year. Some of the changes include Copilot Chat is now in the mix in some of the subscriptions. Also in the mix is enhanced email security features for Microsoft Defender. Intune Help and other Intune capabilities will also become available in some of the subscriptions, as well as Security Copilot agents. And if you want to see what is available in the various different tiers, such as Business Basic, Business Standard, Business Premium, Office 365 E1, Office 365 E3, Microsoft 365 E3, and Microsoft 365 E5, I will share a link to that with this episode, which is episode 417, and you can find it at 5bytespodcast.com. Or if you watch the YouTube version of this episode, you'll see it during this segment of the show as well. But on the updated pricing, they've changed the pricing for Business Basic. Well, I say they've changed it. It will change on July 1st. But for Business Basic, it's going from $6 US to $7. Business Standard is going from $12.50 to $14. Premium, which is currently at $22, is going to stay at $22. Likewise, Office 365 E1 is going to stay at $10. Office 365 E3 is going to go from $23 to $26. Microsoft 365 E3 is going from $36 to $39. 365 E5 is going from $57 to $60. And 365 F1 is going from $2.25 to $3. And F3 is going from $8 to $10. And obviously, as you expect, those kind of higher end prices are for like the majority of the features, you know, the likes of Security Copilot, Intune Enterprise Application Management, Intune Endpoint Privilege Management, Intune Advanced Analytics, Remote Help, etc., would be included in the more expensive, larger bundles. The Cloud Software Group announced the acquisition of Arctera, a global leader in data management. Arctera helps organizations trust, access, and illuminate their data from creation to retirement, and they will operate as a standalone business within CSG. On the acquisition, CEO of CSG, Tom Krause, said, quote, "We are excited to officially welcome Arctera to Cloud Software Group. As a leading provider of data and enterprise infrastructure software solutions for customers worldwide, Arctera fits squarely within our strategy as we help build mission critical capabilities to create enhanced value for customers. The addition of Arctera to our portfolio is an important step forward as we execute our strategy to acquire at scale, enterprise focused software businesses that fit within our proven model." End quote. So, yeah, it seems like they're adding data management specific software to their portfolio in this instance. We'll have to see how that plays out and if it's part of a greater plan and if there will be more acquisitions announced in the coming months or year. Two brothers who were federal contractors working for an undisclosed company in Washington, D.C. that provides software and services to 45 U.S. agencies are alleged to have deleted databases and documents maintained and belonging to three government agencies. Prosecutors in the case said the men coordinated the crimes and began carrying them out just minutes after being fired from their jobs. Prosecutors in the case stated one of the suspects asked an AI tool, "How do I clear system logs from SQL servers after deleting databases?" shortly after deleting the databases. And also shortly after that, he queried asking, "How do you clear all event and application logs from Microsoft Windows Server 2012?" The indictment provided enough details of the databases wiped and information stolen to indicate that the brothers' attempts to cover their tracks failed. It's unclear whether the apparent failure was due to the AI tool providing inadequate instructions or the men failing to follow them correctly. Prosecutors say they also obtained records of discussions between the men in the hours or days following, in which they discussed removing incriminating evidence from their homes. 3 days later, the men allegedly wiped their employer issued laptops by reinstalling the operating system. The alleged incident isn't the first time these men have faced charges either for hacking government systems and stealing documents. In 2015, they pleaded guilty to conspiracy to hack into the State Department and a private company. They stole sensitive passport and visa information and personal information belonging to dozens of their coworkers. They later tried to install an electronic collection device inside a State Department building so they could maintain persistent access to State Department systems, which to me begs the question about hiring practices. How, if they had previously done that to the State Department, did they get hired to work within a company that does services for US agencies? Seems a bit crazy. Swiss data protection officers have warned public bodies not to use cloud services from Microsoft, AWS, or Google for highly sensitive or confidential data due to a lack of true end to end encryption, unless the government can encrypt the data itself and the provider cannot access the keys, according to a report from TechRadar.com. Cloud providers were also criticized by the institution for not offering sufficient transparency to verify security, with long chains of external service providers further complicating data security. So, a pretty damning judgment by the Swiss data protection officers, and maybe one that's not all that surprising, really. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella apparently is spending his weekend studying how startups build products, admitting that due to Microsoft's size, they are at a massive disadvantage. He suggested Microsoft must abandon the know it all mindset that drove its past success and adopt a learn it all approach. And I saw a WindowsCentral.com report on the same interviewer discussion with Satya Nadella in India, suggesting that his remarks may indicate more layoffs are coming. I don't know if that's true. I think that's maybe reading into something that's not there. Although we are also coming up to a time of year when there's an increase in likelihood of further layoffs. Like the beginning of the year is usually pretty bad for layoffs. So, not saying it won't happen, but I don't think these comments from him suggest that there's layoffs that are about to occur. I don't think it's necessarily the number of employees that Microsoft has that limits its agility. I think it's just kind of the complexity of all of their product stacks and various different teams within the organization. And to a degree, they're kind of victims of their own success a little bit. But that's not to say they couldn't cut through the BS and become more agile, at least for certain projects and tasks. So I'm sure that's why he's studying this, because he wants to find a way to make them a little more agile. I'm guessing, particularly when it comes to AI developments, because you could see they are definitely lagging behind. And I think I covered last week the barbs that were being thrown towards Microsoft and the fact that they're relying on OpenAI because they don't have their own substantial AI models and technologies. It's an interesting time for Microsoft. It'll be interesting to see how things play out over the next 2 or 3 years. On Monday, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman reportedly declared a code red at the company to improve ChatGPT, delaying advertising plans and other products in the process. The information reported based on a leaked internal memo, and the move follows Google's release of its Gemini 3 model last month, which has outperformed ChatGPT on some industry benchmark tests and sparked high-profile praise on social media. In the memo, Altman wrote, quote, "We are at a critical time for ChatGPT," end quote. The company will push back work on advertising integration, which has been speculated about for some time, AI agents for health and shopping, and a personal assistant feature called Pulse. And Altman encouraged temporary team transfers and established daily calls for employees responsible for enhancing the chatbot. Not everyone views OpenAI's code red as a genuine alarm, though, and Reuters columnist Robert Siren wrote on Tuesday that OpenAI's announcement added to the impression that OpenAI is trying to do too much at once with technology that still requires a great deal of development and funding. And on the same day Altman's memo circulated, OpenAI announced an ownership stake in a Thrive Capital venture and a collaboration with Accenture. The only thing bigger than the company's attention deficit, according to Siren, is its appetite for capital, which is also a little bit troubling considering their ballooning costs. In fact, OpenAI faces an unusual competitive disadvantage. Unlike Google, which subsidizes its AI ventures through search advertising revenue, OpenAI does not turn a profit, as I kind of alluded to, and relies on fundraising to survive. Yeah, I think, geez, if you go back, was it 2 or 3 years ago now when I first started covering OpenAI and ChatGPT? I was saying that I think the obvious leader in this space would be Google, just because they've been the one true source for information for so long that they've built up that war chest. So if they just improve their technology, they would have the advantage. But not only that, I mean, at the time, I didn't think this, but they obviously also have that advantage that they're currently a profit making company. So they're able to invest in this AI technology whilst also turning a profit and being able to take some of that money from the profit and invest into the technology rather than relying on investment from outside. So interesting times, I guess. But now this episode's scripts, tricks, and tips. First up, Microsoft has posted an article suggesting the use of Copilot for generating your performance review this year. NeoWin.net framed a story about this by suggesting that Microsoft wants you to generate AI slop for your self review. Honestly, I don't think it's a bad use for AI, and while AI slop will be a likely outcome from trying this, if you do review the output and edit it accordingly, it could be a good choice still. It's going to save you some time. And Paul Turo has some recommendations this week to de-inshitify Windows 11 25H2. And I don't know if that's a curse or not. So I'm not sure if I mark this episode as having a curse. I guess it's not when it's said like that. But yeah, obviously there's major concerns and problems with Windows 11 25H2. And I alluded to that earlier in a previous story. A lot of people are holding off on upgrading to 25H2 due to the various stories of instability. And certainly that's been my experience as well. 25H2 has not been plain sailing for me. But it looks like Paul has a couple of tools that he suggests, as well as just some other tips for making Windows 11 a little more bearable with 25H2. But that's it for this episode of the podcast. Thanks so much for listening.